Imagine standing at the edge of history, where ancient Africa's might echoes through time. The Bible, yes, that ancient book, holds stories of powerful black kings and queens who ruled vast lands and shaped destinies. These aren't just tales of faith, they're glimpses into a rich royal past we rarely hear about. Who were these towering figures? From Ethiopia to Egypt, their names whisper through sacred pages, commanding empires and leaving legacies that still stir our souls. Today, we're diving into 7 key points to uncover their stories. Did they really exist? What power did they wield? And why does it matter now? This isn't your typical history lesson. It's a journey to reclaim a hidden heritage. Picture queens with wisdom to rival Solomon, kings who defied empires, and a truth that challenges what we've been told. Ready to meet them? Let's step into the sands of time and find out who these African royals were, straight from the Bible's own words. Buckle up, because their stories are about to grab you and not let go. Let's start with a name that rings through history, the Queen of Sheba. Her story is one of mystery, power, and wisdom, a tale that has captured imaginations for thousands of years. The Bible calls her the Queen of the South in 1 Kings 10, but her influence stretches far beyond those ancient pages. She ruled a kingdom stretching across modern-day Ethiopia and Yemen, a land rich with gold, spices, and unimaginable wealth. But she wasn't just rich. She was brilliant, strategic, and deeply curious. She was a leader who understood the value of knowledge, and her journey to test King Solomon became one of the most iconic encounters in human history. Imagine this: a queen from the southern reaches of the known world, commanding a caravan laden with treasures, gold, precious stones, and aromatic spices. This wasn't just a diplomatic visit, it was a mission. She came to challenge Solomon, the wisest man on earth, with riddles and questions designed to probe the depths of his intellect. And what happened? The Bible says she left him speechless. Yes, speechless. She didn't just admire his wisdom, she matched it. Her sharp mind and discerning spirit earned her a place in history as one of the most formidable rulers of all time. Ethiopian tradition gives her a name, Makeda. To Ethiopians, she is more than a queen. She is the mother of their nation. According to legend, her visit to Solomon wasn't just about exchanging wisdom. It was about forging a connection that would shape generations to come. Tradition holds that she returned home, carrying Solomon's child, Menelik I, who would go on to found the Solomonic dynasty in Ethiopia. This isn't just folklore. It's a narrative that ties Africa directly to one of the most celebrated kings in biblical history. It's a reminder that the roots of greatness often stretch further and deeper than we realize. But let's not forget the significance of her journey. Traveling from her kingdom to Jerusalem in an era without modern conveniences was no small feat. It required planning, resources, and immense courage. She crossed deserts and mountains, leading a caravan that announced her power and prestige to the world. Her arrival in Jerusalem must have been a sight to behold. A black queen, radiant and regal, stepping into a city that symbolized divine favor and earthly prosperity. She wasn't there to bow or beg. She came to engage, to learn, and to leave her mark. Centuries later, Jesus himself honored her quest for truth. In Matthew 12:42, he said, "The Queen of the South will rise at the judgment with this generation and condemn it. For she came from the ends of the earth to listen to Solomon's wisdom." Think about that. A woman from Africa, traveling across continents, seeking wisdom, and being remembered by the Son of God himself. That's not just a story, it's a legacy. Was she real? Scholars and archaeologists continue to debate, but evidence points to the reality of her reign. Ancient ruins in Axum, Ethiopia, hint at a civilization of extraordinary wealth and sophistication. Inscriptions and artifacts suggest a kingdom that thrived on trade, innovation, and cultural exchange. She wasn't just a visitor to Israel. She was a ruler who bridged continents, connecting Africa, the Middle East, and beyond. Her legacy shines not only in scripture, but also in the traditions of Ethiopia, where she is celebrated as a national hero. Today, her story challenges us to think bigger. She reminds us that true power lies not just in wealth or authority, but in the pursuit of wisdom and understanding. She teaches us to cross boundaries, to seek knowledge, and to leave a legacy that transcends time. She wasn't just a queen, she was a pioneer, a trailblazer whose footsteps echo through history. And her story invites us to ask, what kind of legacy are we building? How far are we willing to go to seek truth and make an impact? The Queen of Sheba wasn't just a figure of the past. She is a beacon for the present and the future, a symbol of resilience, curiosity, and unshakable strength. Her story continues to inspire because it speaks to something universal, the desire to grow, to connect, and to leave the world better than we found it. Next, let us journey to the sands of ancient Kush, where a warrior king rose to power and etched his name into the annals of history. Meet Taharka, a ruler whose courage and vision made him one of the most formidable figures of the ancient world. The Bible mentions him in 2 Kings 19:9 as the king of Ethiopia, who stood against the mighty Assyrian general Sennacherib. But Taharka was far more than just a name in Scripture. He was a king who united kingdoms, defended nations, and left behind a legacy that still resonates today. Taharka ruled during the height of the 25th dynasty of Egypt, around 690 BCE, a time when Kush, modern-day Sudan, was a beacon of African power and culture. His reign wasn't just about conquest, it was about restoration. When he ascended the throne, Egypt was fractured and weakened by internal strife. Taharka didn't just claim the crown, he breathed new life into the land. He rebuilt temples, revived arts and architecture, and restored the spiritual heart of a nation. His statues at Karnak still stand today, their features unmistakably African, a proud testament to a black king who ruled with both strength and grace. But Taharka's story isn't just about what he built, it's about what he defended. Imagine this. The Assyrian Empire, one of the most brutal and expansive forces of the ancient world, was marching toward Jerusalem. King Hezekiah of Judah was under siege, and all hope seemed lost. Then came Taharka, leading an army from Kush to confront the Assyrians. This wasn't just a military campaign. It was an act of defiance against an empire that sought to dominate the known world. Though the Bible doesn't delve deeply into the details, historians believe Taharka's intervention forced Sennacherib to retreat, sparing Jerusalem from destruction. It was a bold move that shook empires and altered the course of history. What makes Taharka's story so compelling is not just his military prowess, but his humanity. He wasn't just a warrior, he was a builder, a unifier, and a patron of culture. Under his rule, Kush and Egypt became part of Africa's largest empire at the time. He invested in infrastructure, constructing irrigation systems that brought life to arid lands. He commissioned grand monuments that celebrated the gods and the people, and he fostered a renaissance of art and literature, reviving traditions that had been lost to time. Taharka's reign reminds us that true leadership isn't just about wielding power. It's about using that power to uplift and inspire. Yet, Taharka's story is also one of resilience. Despite his victories, his reign faced challenges. The Assyrians eventually regrouped and pushed back, forcing Taharka to retreat southward. But even in retreat, he remained steadfast. He continued to rule from Napata, the capital of Kush, ensuring that his kingdom endured. His ability to adapt and persevere in the face of adversity speaks volumes about his character. He wasn't just a king, he was a survivor, a leader who understood that the strength of a nation lies in its people and its spirit. Taharka's legacy extends far beyond his lifetime. His reign is a testament to the sophistication and power of ancient African civilizations. For centuries, Western narratives have downplayed or ignored the contributions of African rulers like Taharka, portraying them as peripheral figures in a Eurocentric history. But the truth is undeniable. Taharka was a central player on the world stage, a black king whose influence stretched across continents. His story challenges us to rethink the way we view history and to recognize the richness of Africa's past. Today, Taharka's memory lives on in the ruins of pyramids and temples scattered across Sudan, silent witnesses to a once glorious empire. His statues, with their proud African features, remind us of a time when black kings ruled with dignity and authority. His story inspires us to embrace our roots, to celebrate the achievements of those who came before us, and to carry their legacy forward. Taharka teaches us that leadership is about more than titles or wealth. It's about vision, courage, and the willingness to stand up for what is right, even when the odds are stacked against you. He reminds us that greatness isn't measured by how much we conquer, but by how much we build, how much we protect, and how much we inspire. Taharka wasn't just a king. He was a symbol of resilience, a beacon of hope, and a reminder that Africa's history is filled with stories of triumph and brilliance. His voice echoes through the ages, urging us to rise, to lead, and to leave a mark on the world that will endure long after we are gone. Now, let us turn our attention to a title that carries the weight of power and authority: Candace, Queen of Ethiopia. In Acts 8:27, we encounter this name, not as an individual, but as a title for the queens of Ethiopia, or Kush. These women were no ordinary rulers. They were regal forces of nature, commanding vast armies, immense wealth, and unshakable influence. Their reigns stretched along the Nile, shaping one of the most powerful civilizations of the ancient world. The Bible doesn't delve deeply into their lives, but what it does reveal is enough to ignite our curiosity and admiration. The story begins with an Ethiopian official, a eunuch serving in the court of Candace. This treasurer, a man of great importance, was returning from Jerusalem after worshiping at the temple. It's worth pausing here to consider the significance of this detail. Ethiopia, a nation far to the south of Israel, had deep ties to the faith and traditions of the Hebrew people. This wasn't just a casual connection. It was a testament to the reach and influence of the Candaces. These queens ruled a kingdom that rivaled Rome itself, yet they fostered spiritual exploration and cultural exchange. Their courts were places of learning, devotion, and diplomacy. As the treasurer traveled home, he encountered Philip, one of the early Christian evangelists. What happened next is remarkable. The eunuch, reading from the book of Isaiah, invited Philip to explain its meaning. In that moment, under the African sun, the treasurer embraced the message of Christ and became one of the first recorded converts in the New Testament. This encounter wasn't just a personal transformation. It was a glimpse into the broader impact of Ethiopia's queens. Their leadership created an environment where faith could flourish, where seekers could find truth, and where nations could connect across boundaries. But who were these Candaces? Historians tell us that the title Candace was used for a line of queens who ruled Kush with iron and grace. One of the most famous among them was Amanitore, whose reign left an indelible mark on history. She was a builder, commissioning temples, pyramids, and irrigation systems that transformed her kingdom. Her legacy can still be seen in the ruins of Meroe, a city that once stood as the heart of Nubian civilization. These queens weren't figureheads. They were active rulers, leading armies into battle, negotiating treaties, and ensuring the prosperity of their people. Their power was unmatched. While Europe was still emerging from the shadows of prehistory, the Candaces were building a dynasty that thrived along the Nile. They controlled trade routes that connected Africa, the Middle East, and beyond. Gold, ivory, and incense flowed through their lands, enriching their treasury and solidifying their influence. Yet, their strength wasn't just material, it was cultural and spiritual. The Candaces embodied a blend of authority and wisdom, ruling with a balance of firmness and compassion that earned them the loyalty of their people. What makes the story of the Candaces so compelling is how it challenges modern perceptions of history. For too long, the contributions of African rulers have been overlooked or diminished. But here, in the pages of scripture and the annals of archaeology, we find undeniable proof of their greatness. These queens weren't passive participants in history. They were architects of it. They shaped the destiny of their people and left a legacy that continues to inspire. Today, the memory of the Candaces calls us to reflect on the qualities of true leadership. They remind us that power isn't just about domination. It's about service, vision, and the ability to uplift others. Their courts were places where faith and intellect intersected, where seekers found answers, and where nations found allies. They teach us that greatness isn't measured by the size of one's empire, but by the depth of one's impact. The story of the Candaces also invites us to reclaim our narratives. Too often, history has been written through a narrow lens, excluding the voices of those who shaped it. But here, in the mention of a single title, Candace, we find a doorway to a rich and vibrant past. These queens challenge us to dig deeper, to uncover the stories that have been buried, and to honor the legacies of those who came before us. In the end, the Candaces are more than historical figures. They are symbols of resilience, wisdom, and enduring strength. Their reigns remind us that Africa's history is not one of victimhood, but of triumph. They inspire us to lead with courage, to build with purpose, and to leave behind a legacy that will shine like the gold of their treasuries. The Candaces may have ruled centuries ago, but their voices echo still, urging us to rise, to lead, and to carry forward the torch of greatness that they lit so long ago. Let's turn our attention to a union that wasn't just a marriage. It was a bridge between civilizations, a testament to the interconnectedness of ancient worlds. In 1 Kings 3:1, we learn that Solomon, Israel's wisest king, married an Egyptian princess. Her name is never mentioned in the Bible, but her presence speaks volumes. She wasn't just a queen. She was a symbol of power, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. And though the scriptures don't dwell on her story, the implications of her role are profound. This unnamed woman, likely the daughter of a pharaoh from Egypt's 21st dynasty, was more than a bride. She was a black queen whose influence reached the heart of Jerusalem. To understand her significance, we must first step back and consider the world she came from. Ancient Egypt during this period was ruled by African kings, dark-skinned and mighty. who commanded one of the most powerful empires of the time. These rulers weren't just conquerors. They were custodians of culture, science, and spirituality. Their pyramids, temples, and monuments still stand as testaments to their ingenuity and vision. When Solomon chose to unite his kingdom with Egypt through marriage, he wasn't merely seeking an alliance. He was forging a bond that would elevate both nations. Imagine the scene: a royal procession winding its way from the banks of the Nile to the hills of Jerusalem. The princess arrives not empty-handed, but laden with treasures, gold, jewels, and artifacts that reflect the wealth and sophistication of her homeland. This wasn't just a dowry, it was a statement. It declared that Egypt was a force to be reckoned with, a civilization whose contributions could not be ignored. And yet, this union was about more than material wealth. It was about trust, mutual respect, and the blending of two great cultures. The marriage of Solomon and the Egyptian princess is often overlooked in biblical narratives, but its implications are staggering. For one, it underscores the deep ties between Africa and the Middle East. Egypt wasn't just a neighbor of Israel. It was a partner, a collaborator, and at times, a rival. By bringing an Egyptian princess into his court, Solomon signaled that peace and prosperity were possible, even between nations with complex histories. This wasn't just a political move, it was a spiritual one. The princess brought with her not only the prestige of her lineage, but also the wisdom and traditions of her people. She became part of the fabric of Solomon's kingdom, a living link between two worlds. But let's not forget the personal dimension of her story. Who was this woman? What thoughts filled her mind as she left her homeland to become a queen in a foreign land? We can only imagine the courage it took to step into a new culture, to adapt to a new way of life, and to navigate the complexities of Solomon's court. She wasn't just a passive participant in this union. She was an active force, shaping the dynamics of power and diplomacy in ways we may never fully know. Her silence in the biblical text doesn't diminish her importance, it amplifies it. She stands as a reminder that history is often shaped by those who work behind the scenes, quietly influencing the course of events. This union also challenges us to rethink the way we view relationships between nations. Too often, we see alliances as transactions, exchanges of power or resources. But Solomon's marriage to the Egyptian princess reminds us that true partnerships are built on shared values, mutual respect, and a vision for the future. It wasn't just about securing borders or boosting economies. It was about creating something greater than the sum of its parts. It was about weaving together the threads of two distinct cultures to create a tapestry of unity and strength. Today, the legacy of this unnamed queen invites us to reflect on the power of connection. She reminds us that greatness isn't confined to individuals or nations. It's found in the bridges we build between them. Her story challenges us to look beyond borders, to embrace diversity, and to recognize the value of collaboration. She teaches us that leadership isn't just about ruling. It's about uniting, about finding common ground, even in the face of difference. In the end, the Egyptian princess wasn't just a queen of Jerusalem. She was a queen of possibility. Her marriage to Solomon wasn't just a footnote in history. It was a turning point, a moment when two civilizations came together to create something extraordinary. Though her name may be lost to time, her legacy endures. She reminds us that even the quietest voices can shape the loudest echoes, that even the smallest acts of courage can leave the deepest marks. She calls us to rise above division, to seek understanding, and to build bridges that will carry us into a brighter future. Let's turn our gaze to a name that resonates with power and defiance: Zerah, the Ethiopian. In 2 Chronicles 14:9, we encounter this formidable figure, a Cushite commander who led an army of unimaginable size against Judah's king Asa. His story is brief in the biblical text, but its implications are monumental. Zerah wasn't just a soldier, he was a military giant, a leader whose forces shook the foundations of an entire kingdom. To understand his significance, we must step into the world of ancient warfare, where battles were fought not only with swords and shields, but with strategy, courage, and sheer will. Imagine this: a vast army of 1,000,000 men marching across the arid plains of southwest Palestine. At their helm stood Zerah, a black warrior from Nubia, leading his troops with authority and precision. This wasn't just a skirmish or a raid, it was a full-scale invasion. The numbers alone are staggering. 1,000,000 soldiers, accompanied by 300 chariots, descended upon Judah like a storm. For context, consider the scale of such a force. It would have stretched for miles, a sea of warriors and weapons, a testament to the might of Cushite military power. Zerah wasn't merely testing Judah's defenses, he was challenging its very existence. But why did Zerah march against Judah? The Bible doesn't provide explicit details, but history offers clues. During this period, Cush, modern-day Sudan, was a dominant force in northeastern Africa, rivaling even Egypt in influence and strength. Its leaders commanded vast resources and wielded significant political power. Zerah's campaign may have been part of a broader strategy to expand Cushite territory or secure trade routes. Whatever the motive, his arrival on Judah's doorstep sent shockwaves through the region. King Asa, though known for his faith and reforms, faced what seemed like insurmountable odds. How could a small kingdom possibly withstand such a colossal force? What makes Zerah's story so compelling isn't just the size of his army, it's the audacity of his ambition. He wasn't content to remain within the borders of Cush. He sought to extend his reach, to assert his dominance on a global stage. His invasion of Judah was a bold declaration of Cushite power, a reminder that Africa's influence extended far beyond its own shores. Zerah wasn't just fighting for land or wealth. He was fighting for legacy, for a place in the annals of history. Yet, as the story unfolds, we see the limits of human strength. Despite his overwhelming numbers, Zerah was defeated. King Asa, trusting in divine intervention, prayed fervently and led his army into battle. Against all odds, Judah emerged victorious. Zerah's forces were routed, his chariots overturned, and his plans undone. But here's the remarkable part. Zerah's defeat doesn't diminish his legacy. If anything, it amplifies it. The sheer scale of his campaign, and the fact that it took a miracle to stop him, speaks volumes about his capabilities as a leader and strategist. Zerah's story challenges us to think deeply about power and resilience. He reminds us that true greatness isn't defined by victory alone. It's defined by the courage to take risks, to push boundaries, and to leave a mark on the world. Even in defeat, Zerah's name endures because he dared to dream big. He dared to challenge a kingdom, to march into uncharted territory, and to stake his claim on history. Today, Zerah stands as a symbol of Africa's military prowess in biblical times. His story counters the narrative that African civilizations were passive or peripheral in ancient history. On the contrary, they were active participants in the geopolitical landscape, shaping events and influencing outcomes. Zerah's campaign against Judah is a testament to the sophistication and strength of Cushite leadership. It reminds us that Africa's contributions to the ancient world were vast and varied, encompassing not only trade and culture, but also military innovation and strategic brilliance. Moreover, Zira's story invites us to reflect on the nature of leadership. He teaches us that leadership isn't just about commanding armies or amassing resources. It's about vision, determination, and the willingness to face adversity head-on. Zira didn't shy away from challenges. He embraced them, even when the odds were stacked against him. His courage inspires us to confront our own battles with the same tenacity and resolve. In the end, Zira the Ethiopian isn't just a name in the Bible. He's a beacon of resilience and ambition. His story calls us to rise above fear, to pursue our goals with unwavering determination, and to leave behind a legacy that transcends time. Though his campaign ended in defeat, his spirit lives on, urging us to act boldly, to dream fearlessly, and to carve out our place in the world. Zira reminds us that greatness isn't measured by the battles we win, but by the courage we show in fighting them. In Jeremiah 38:7, we meet a man whose name might not ring with the grandeur of kings or queens, but whose actions speak louder than any title ever could. Ebed-Melech, a Cushite servant in King Zedekiah's court, is one of the most unsung heroes of the Bible. His story may be brief, but it is a powerful testament to courage, loyalty, and the quiet strength that often goes unnoticed in the pages of history. Though he was neither ruler nor warrior, Ebed-Melech's bravery saved a prophet, challenged injustice, and left an indelible mark on the narrative of faith. To understand his significance, let us step into the chaos of Jerusalem during its darkest hour. The city was under siege by the Babylonians, its walls trembling under relentless attacks, its people gripped by fear and despair. Inside the palace, political intrigue swirled like a storm. Jeremiah, the prophet of God, had dared to speak truth to power, warning the king and his advisors that resistance against Babylon would lead to destruction. But instead of heeding his words, they saw him as a threat, a voice of dissent that needed to be silenced. And so, Jeremiah was cast into a muddy cistern, left to die in the filth and darkness. It was a cruel fate for a man who had done nothing but deliver God's message. Enter Ebed-Melech. He wasn't a nobleman or a soldier. He was a foreigner, a Cushite, an Ethiopian, in a land where outsiders were often marginalized. Yet, when he heard of Jeremiah's plight, something stirred within him. Perhaps it was his sense of justice, or perhaps it was his faith in the God Jeremiah served. Whatever the reason, Ebed-Melech refused to stand idly by while an innocent man suffered. He went straight to King Zedekiah, pleading for Jeremiah's life. "My lord the king," he said, "these men have acted wickedly in all they have done to Jeremiah the prophet." His words were bold, especially for a servant speaking to a king, surrounded by advisors who had orchestrated Jeremiah's imprisonment. But Ebed-Melech didn't falter. He stood firm, risking his position, and possibly his life, to advocate for what was right. What happened next is remarkable. King Zedekiah, moved by Ebed-Melech's plea, ordered Jeremiah's rescue. Ebed-Melech didn't stop there. He gathered a group of men, fashioned ropes and rags to protect Jeremiah from the jagged edges of the cistern, and personally ensured the prophet's safe return. Imagine the scene: a humble Cushite servant descending into the pit, reaching out to a man abandoned by those in power. In that moment, Ebed-Melech became more than a servant. He became a hero, a symbol of compassion and integrity in a world consumed by fear and selfishness. But Ebed-Melech's story doesn't end with Jeremiah's rescue. In Jeremiah 39:16-18, God speaks directly to him through the prophet, promising protection and blessing because of his faith and courage. "I will deliver you," God declares, "and you will not fall by the sword, but your life will be spared because you trusted in me." This divine affirmation underscores the profound impact of Ebed-Melech's actions. He wasn't just saving a man, he was standing up for truth, for justice, and for the values that transcend earthly power. His reward wasn't wealth or fame. It was the assurance of God's favor, a legacy written into eternity. Ebed-Melech's story challenges us to rethink what it means to be a hero. Heroes aren't always the ones with titles, armies, or crowns. Sometimes they are the quiet voices in the background, the ones who step forward when everyone else steps back. Ebed-Melech reminds us that greatness isn't defined by position or privilege, but by character and action. He was a foreigner in a hostile land, yet he chose to act with courage and conviction. He teaches us that no matter our station in life, we have the power to make a difference. Today, Ebed-Melech's legacy calls us to reflect on our own roles in the world. Are we willing to speak up when others are silenced? Are we ready to take risks for the sake of justice and compassion? His story inspires us to embrace humility, to value integrity over recognition, and to trust that even the smallest acts of courage can leave the biggest impact. Ebed-Melech wasn't crowned a king, but his actions crowned him in history, a humble hero whose heartbeat echoes through the ages, reminding us that true greatness lies in service, sacrifice, and unwavering faith. Finally, let us tie this all together. These kings and queens, Sheba, Taharka, Candace, Zerah, Ebed-Melech, and others, are more than just names scattered across the pages of history. They are threads woven into the fabric of humanity's shared story, each one a testament to resilience, wisdom, and courage. Their lives remind us that greatness isn't confined to a single region, race, or era. It transcends boundaries, shaping the world in ways we're only beginning to fully appreciate. But why does their legacy matter today? Why should we dig into these ancient narratives when our modern world moves at such a breakneck pace? The answer lies not just in what they did, but in what they represent. Roots of power, faith, and identity that demand to be reclaimed. Consider this. For centuries, the stories of Africa's contributions to biblical history have been overshadowed, minimized, or outright erased. Western narratives often painted Africa as a passive backdrop, a land of mystery and exoticism, rather than a hub of innovation, leadership, and spiritual depth. Yet here, in the Bible itself, we find undeniable proof of Africa's centrality to the human story. The Queen of Sheba traveled continents to seek wisdom. Taharka defended nations and revived cultures. The Candaces ruled with unmatched authority, blending strength and grace. Zerah led armies that shook kingdoms. And Ebed-Melech, though unnamed in many histories, stood as a beacon of justice and compassion. These figures weren't footnotes. They were architects of history, shaping faith, politics, and culture in ways that still resonate today. But their stories do more than challenge historical narratives. They challenge us. They push us to ask difficult questions about who we are and where we come from. Who is telling our story? Whose voices are being amplified and whose are being silenced? In a world that often reduces Africa's history to tales of colonization and struggle, these biblical accounts remind us of something far greater, a legacy of triumph, innovation, and enduring strength. They call us to reclaim our roots, not just as individuals, but as a collective people. and to recognize the richness of our heritage. Let's pause for a moment and think about urgency. Time is short. Every generation stands at a crossroads, tasked with deciding what to carry forward and what to leave behind. The legacies of Sheba, Taharka, and the rest aren't just relics of the past. They are blueprints for the future. They teach us that true leadership isn't about domination. It's about service, vision, and the ability to inspire others. They show us that faith isn't passive. It's active, requiring courage and conviction, even in the face of overwhelming odds. And they remind us that power isn't measured by wealth or titles, but by impact. The lives we touch, the barriers we break, and the truths we uphold. Today, their voices echo louder than ever. In a world grappling with division, inequality, and uncertainty, their stories offer a way forward. Sheba challenges us to pursue wisdom relentlessly, to cross borders in search of understanding. Taharka inspires us to defend what matters, to stand firm against forces that seek to diminish or destroy. The Candaces urge us to lead with both strength and compassion, balancing authority with empathy. Zerah reminds us to act boldly, to take risks even when the odds seem insurmountable. And Ebed-Melech calls us to live with integrity, to stand up for justice even when it costs us everything. Their legacies also remind us of the importance of storytelling. History isn't just a collection of dates and events. It's a living, breathing narrative that shapes how we see ourselves and our place in the world. When we tell these stories, when we lift up the names of those who came before us, we aren't just preserving the past, we're building the future. We're creating a world where everyone can see themselves in the tapestry of history, where no voice is left unheard, and where every contribution is valued. So, what will you do with their legacy? Will you let it sit on the shelf, gathering dust, or will you carry it forward, letting it guide your steps and shape your actions? The choice is yours, but know this: their lives speak to something universal. They remind us that greatness isn't reserved for the few. It's available to all who dare to rise, to lead, and to leave a mark. Their stories aren't just about them, they're about us. They're about the potential within each of us to make a difference, to build bridges, and to create a better tomorrow. In the end, their message is clear. Act now. Know your worth. Pass it on. The torch has been handed to us, and it's our responsibility to keep it burning brightly. Let their courage fuel your resolve, their wisdom guide your decisions, and their faith anchor your journey. Because when we honor their legacy, we don't just preserve history, we become part of it. And that, perhaps, is the greatest gift they've given us: the chance to join their ranks, to add our voices to theirs, and to ensure that their light continues to shine for generations to come. Sitting with these stories, I feel a pull, a mix of awe and ache. These Black kings and queens weren't myths. They were real, breathing power into Africa's soil. Sheba's riddles, Taharka's battles, Candace's reign, they hit me as reminders of a glory we've overlooked. It stings to think how their names faded, drowned by louder voices. But it lights a fire too. They ruled when the world was young, and the Bible saw them, saw their skin, their strength, their souls. What does that say about us? We're heirs to that might, aren't we? The takeaway's clear. Our history's deeper than we're told, and eternity's tied to it. Their faith shaped nations. Their courage defied odds. We can't just nod and move on. Dig into the Bible yourself. Find Cush, find Egypt, find them. Ask hard questions. Why don't we hear this more? Talk about it with friends, with family. Their urgency isn't past, it's now. Live like their blood runs in you. Share their stories like they're yours, because they are. Eternity's knocking. Let's answer.